Welcome to Coffee with the Canons. My name is Canon Kate Massey, and it's my great privilege to be the Canon for Arts and Reconciliation at Coventry Cathedral. This is our New Year episode, so Happy New Year to everybody watching. And our guest is our boss, the Dean, John Witcombe. So welcome, Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, and to you.
Thank you. And John, 2026, big year.
A few transitions.
Yes. John is retiring in May, but this is not our farewell episode. This is much more to hear about your story, why you love this place and all the great things that we do here and how you ended up being our dean. So we'll be talking about that in a minute, but it is our tradition to ask our guests to bring a mug and tell us about it.
So I've brought this rather fetching mug. It's got my name on it, which is always good for those days when I have forgotten who I am or what I'm doing here. But this mug has travelled with me for 45 years. When I was 21, I went to New York to work for a year as an intern in a church on the Upper West Side. If anyone knows New York, just around the corner from Zabar's Delicatessen, which is quite well known. And when I arrived in the office, they gave me two mugs, an I Love New York mug and this one with my name on it, which was a lovely welcome gift. And it's been really great to have it with me all those years to remind me of that incredible year that I spent in New York.
Fantastic.
In
I'm
1980.
Just so impressed. Anybody can keep a mug for 45 years without outlanding the kitchen floor. Very impressed. Fabulous. So, you told us already a little bit of your story there, but my first question is, how did you end up being Dean of Coventry Cathedral? We can have the long version or the short version.
Well, it's one of those things that I guess that when you look back on it, you can see how everything has led to it. And we can perhaps talk about that a little bit more in a moment. I started out when I was at school. I thought I'd probably be an engineer. And so I love the fact that I've ended up in this extraordinary example of civil engineering. So civil engineering was definitely what I was going to do. And then I decided not to do that. I went off and studied law. And partway through the law degree, felt God calling me into ordained ministry. So finished the law degree, went to New York, came back, worked in parishes for about 15 years, and then worked in training and vocations work, talking to people about what it might mean for them to be vicars. And then after doing that, I thought, I think I should probably really lead something of my own again now. I think I've done my bit of helping other people do their thing. So I cast around a little bit for what it might be, and here I am. That's the very short version.
Wow. And what attracted you here? What do you love about Coventry Cathedral?
So many things. So the thing that everybody knows about Coventry Cathedral is that it has reconciliation at its heart. And one of the things that some people may know is that one of the ways that we understand that is a verse from St. Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 18, which said, God was in Christ reconciling the world to God's self and has given us, entrusted us with the ministry of reconciliation. Now, just before coming to Coventry, I was working in vocations, talking to people who thought they might want to become vicars. And one of the ways that I helped them understand what it meant to be a vicar was to use that very verse and saying being an ordained person is all about embodying and giving life to the ministry of reconciliation. That's at the heart of Anglican ministry. So when I was thinking about what I might do for my next job, and I saw the job of Coventry Cathedral advertised, I went into the detail, and one of the first things I came across was that very verse. And I thought, this is interesting. And then there was a little bit more material about what Coventry understands by the ministry of reconciliation. And I came across the three priorities, which I'm sure you'll have talked about before in this podcast: healing the wounds of history, learning to live with difference and celebrate diversity, building a culture of peace, now justice and peace. And I went, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I have always understood the ministry of the Anglican Church, and as an ordained minister, embodying that ministry, what it means to be a vicar. And particularly for me. So when I saw that advertised, I thought, do you know, if it was right under God for me to offer for ordination all those years ago, before I got my mug from New York, it's right for me to offer for this job, because to affirm the one is to affirm the other, to deny the one is to deny the other. So I applied for the job. Here I am.
Wonderful. I just want to pick, this is going off script, but you say the word to offer for one. I know the word offer is really important to you, but I've never asked you why. Do you want to tell me?
Oh, what a great question. So I think that when you explore what might be the next thing to do, what I've always sought to do is to respond to what God is calling me.
Yeah.
And as I said, my work was in vocation, so my entire life was about trying to help other people work out what God was calling them to do. And so somebody used to come to me and say, I think maybe I should be a vicar. I would say to them, okay, so is this realistic, given who you are and your circumstances and your character? Is it informed? Do you have any idea what a vicar does? And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, is it obedient? Is there some sign that God is calling you to this? So in other words, you open yourself up to all of that. You offer yourself to God and say, well, okay, God, if this is what you want me to do, I'm up for it. So you do apply. Just like you do with any other job. But the application process is, in my understanding, part of offering yourself and what God has made you by that stage for this role.
Oh, thank you. I was curious.
Okay.
There we go. And back to the script. But yeah, so tell us, you've been here now, what, almost 13 years? And what are some of the highlights of your time here?
Well, it's been amazing. I think I've spent a lot of my life, I'm quite a forward-orientated person, and so much of my life I've spent preparing for the next big thing.
Yeah.
Well, being here was the big thing. And as I look back through my life, I can see how so many threads have all come together to this particular role. So it has been an extraordinary opportunity for me to be, I believe, the person that God has called me to be in this place, and hopefully play my part in helping Coventry Cathedral be the cathedral that God has called it to be. So highlights have included, I guess one of the things that I'd probably have to go for is removing the admissions charge. I commend the care of the finances that was exercised perhaps by those who introduced it. They thought it was a good idea. But it really did undermine our mission. So having the support of the diocese and others to remove that admission charge was a very, very happy moment. Yeah. And I will, stand to protect that decision as much as I can. So that's been amazing in relation to the building. Of course, the reconciliation ministry. Yeah. I have had the joy and the privilege to speak about reconciliation both locally and nationally and internationally. And so,
how many of the continents have you visited doing this, do you reckon?
Well, a few.
Well, there's only 6.
There's only 6. I haven't been to Antarctica, which I'm a little bit sad about. But New Zealand, South Africa, the States and Canada, quite extensively in Europe, particularly, of course, Germany, but the Netherlands as well. I think that's probably about it. I mean, that's not too many, really, is it? But it has been, of course, the opportunity to travel and meet people has been amazing. So the reconciliation ministry has been phenomenal. But then what we've been able to do in the cathedral with the arts has been just a joy.
Absolutely, and that's been one of your huge passions, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think when I was drawn to Coventry because of the reconciliation ministry. That was the thing that I just thought, oh my gosh, this so captures everything that I believe my life and ministry has been about. It's both about the church and about the world. It's about a very inclusive, all-embracing work of God. But when I came to the cathedral as dean, obviously I knew that it was this sort of great temple, I guess, of mid-20th century art. But it hadn't really landed with me just what opportunities that presented. And so when I came actually to my installation as dean back in January 2013, a good friend of mine who is a fine artist and also a priest with a German Jewish heritage said, just in conversation, that she just finished a project of completing a series of Stations of the Cross, which also drew on the history of the Holocaust, Stations of the Holocaust it was called. And I found myself saying, well, why do you want to bring them here? Let's bring them here. And so that happened. And then I went to a degree show of one of my children, and they showed me a sculpture piece of 2 homeless people in a doorway. And I said, what's going to happen to that? And they said, well, we don't know. I said, why don't you bring it to the cathedral? And a whole series of things like that happened. And before we knew it, we'd got this revived and refreshed arts programme, at the heart of which was, I guess, me having the opportunity to say yes, and also often seeing things where I saw something and I thought, I could just imagine that in the cathedral. And then sometimes 1, 2, 3, actually for the Epstein exhibition we did here, 8 years later, actually being able to see an idea come to fruition. That's been fantastic.
Amazing. And I hear a little bit of, I was just in the right place at the right timeness about some of this as well. Has there been a spectacular story of that you might want to share?
Oh, gosh. I mean, that's a really good spot, because I think that every single day I start the day by asking God to help me be the person that God wants me to be, and in the place where God wants me to be. I don't know. I mean, I'll give you this example. It may be a bit of an odd one, but I was at an event at Lambeth Palace where people were talking about some projects that were going on in cathedrals, and it was I knew exactly who I wanted to speak to in the room.
Of course.
I'm a consummate networker, and so the moment coffee started, I was up and I was out of my seat and I was talking to all the people that I felt I needed to talk to. And then I thought, I probably should talk to the lady sitting next to me, because it's a little bit rude not to, who's sitting there quite quietly. So I came back to my seat and I went, hello, I'm John, who are you? And it turned out that she was one of the administrators for one of the large fund-making trusts, who have ended up actually supporting the cathedral. If I added up, probably to the tune of around £2 million over the time that I've been here.
Oh my goodness.
And some of those relationships where you just try to be open to God, and you find that, in some of the work we've done in the cathedral, also around reconciliation, you form relationships, and then you just see where they go.
Absolutely. And you certainly have made a huge number of friendships with their city, with the arts community. It's just,
I love meeting new people. I mean, I guess that's probably, we all bring different pieces of character to a role. I think one of the things I will miss most about the cathedral, I know we're not here to talk about me leaving.
Nope, not yet, not allowed.
But is that opportunity to walk up to a visitor and say, and what brings you to Coventry Cathedral today? I am always thrilled by those conversations. I guess we have a beautiful building here. So one day maybe somebody will come in and say, this cathedral doesn't touch me at all. I'm completely bored by it. And I will go, almost hallelujah, because so many visitors come and say, this place so speaks to me. I confess, in a way that almost suggests that they're the first person that's ever said that to you. And I go, people say that to me almost every day. But it is wonderful. It is wonderful meeting people. And I think just finding out what people's stories are has also led to many wonderful relationships.
Yeah. So you're talking a bit about, the different things that you've done in your life before you came to Coventry that have just all come together in this thing. God was shaping you for a thing. This is the thing. And there's been lots of ingredients and a lot of experiences along the way to getting here. Do you want to tell us about some of them?
Well, I think some of them would be sort of obviously to do with faith and growth in faith. And I think, my own personal vocation to being ordained was actually born out of, again, a part-time job that I did as a student working on a factory floor. And I think I had become a Christian a year or two before, and becoming a Christian seemed to me to be all about hope and possibility. And I think at the time I was actually working in a factory where we followed continental round-the-clock shifts, we work in a plastic moulding factory. So you couldn't even leave a machine without putting up your hand for somebody to look after the machine because of the hot plastic going through it. And I think the determination to find a way of offering hope into an environment which seemed to have very small horizons was sewn into my vocation. And so when I was first ordained, I became an industrial chaplain, and then over the years built quite a lot of things around, very much about outreach into communities. And my last job in parish ministry was in Uxbridge in West London, where we had an arts centre in a multi-use building.
Wow!
And so I learnt about running an arts centre in the heart of West London. So all of that was in there. I have always been quite interested in changing the world for the better. When I was in theological college, I was the CND rep for the college and got the student union in the college to sign up to CND, and got involved in a little bit of activism, marching down Oxford Street and all the rest of it. So quite a number of things about kind of mission and outreach have contributed to my work here. Oddly enough, I've never really done sort of cathedral. So unlike the majority of deans, I've never sung in a cathedral choir. I am more of a follower of contemporary music than Tudor music. Tudor music is nice, and but it's a bit of a, can we do a both and, not a kind of exclusivist sort of thing. But then the other thing for me here has been the arts, and I think that many of us have passions that we don't quite recognise them as being that deep-seated until somebody almost labels them. So I think I've always known that whenever I'm on holiday, I like to go to art galleries, and I'm always interested in the arts. I'm always interested in the way that they bring people together. They help us look at things differently. But it was only after coming here and, as it were, kind of reading backwards that I thought, my gosh, this has really been sown in me since I was a pre-teenager living in Manchester. My father, on a wet Sunday afternoon, would take us to the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester, quite a modern art gallery. Yeah. But I just remember the feeling of that, and everything that was bound into that has kind of borne fruit now. So it turns out actually that I know a bit more about art and a bit more naturally given to that than perhaps even I'd realised before I came.
You've answered one of the questions that was brewing for me, because I was like, how does an engineer theologian end up being as passionate as you are about art? But it goes right back. Well, that's interesting.
So, I think it's one of the, again, I feel this is very Anglican, because I think we cover quite a lot of breadth in what we do. I remember years and years and years ago, somebody rather kindly, while I was at school, I think, describing me as a scientist with soul. So the kind of engineering sort of thing. The engineering thing, though, is really relevant to a cathedral, because actually one of the things that actually I also love about the cathedral is the kind of challenging, problem-solving part of the work. So you're responsible for this. I sometimes think of it almost as being a little island kingdom. That sounds terrible, probably. Shouldn't have admitted that out loud. But you are confronted with quite a lot of problems. And when I worked in vocations, I began to learn how different people brought their character into a potential future as an ordained minister. And the phrase that I always associate with engineers is, I think I might have something out back that might just fix that. And so I have a kind of metaphorical shed, and I love finding workarounds, and which you have to do in a place like this, because as we know, our resources are limited, and we are always finding workarounds.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of my fond memories of arriving at Coventry Cathedral, I think, was on my first or second day, and I was clearing out one of the cupboards to make space for my own junk, and I found this ancient music centre, which I'd just shoved outside my door as a piece of junk. And you and Simon, our COO, who's also of an engineering bent, found it and were picking it up and looking at it going, I wonder if we can get this to work again.
Absolutely. Yeah. But never check it out. Always have a bit of a play. Yeah. One of my mantras is take it apart and put it back together and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then fair enough. But often it does.
Gosh, it's something hugely theological and all that, but we've not got time to wrap that.
Yeah, absolutely. Letting God do that stuff with us, I think, is part also of the vocational journey. Yeah.
I've got a few more minutes, so I'm just going to chuck in another question, because obviously, there's art, there's visual art, but you love music. Mm-hmm. Tell me about music and...
Oh, well, so this is a kind of embarrassing bit of background, really, depending on your taste. So I'm a bit of a devotee of prog rock, and prog rock is widely despised, at least it used to be, when I was kind of into it in the sort of 80s and 90s. It was a kind of 70s thing, really. But then it got replaced by punk and all of that kind of thing. But I quite loved that kind of like slightly overblown sort of symphony thing. Oh, I'm a dean, for goodness sake. So love prog rock. And one of the things that I was most excited about when I got this particular job, I nearly said this gig, was that Tangerine Dream, who were one of the leading prog bands in the 70s, had played the Cathedral in 1974, and that the video of that is on YouTube. And not only had they played the Cathedral, but they played a particular... I'm sorry, this is very nerdy.
I asked you, it's my
you
fault.
Asked me, and they had played a particular piece of music called Ricochet. Now, Ricochet is a gorgeous album, which I have on vinyl from when it first came out. And I even remember the review in the NME, New Musical Express, which I used to get weekly and read avidly, saying, "Oh my gosh, it's an album from Tangerine Dream with something like a tune," which was very unusual for the time because it was all kind of like whale noise stuff. So I was very excited about that. And so coming to a place where Tangerine Dream had played was amazing for me. And then actually to pursue the reformed Tangerine Dream and to get them back in 2022 and to talk to people on the front row of that gig and say, how many of you were here, 50 years ago when Tangerine Dream first played, and to find people on the front row of that gig who had been here all those years ago. Absolutely brilliant. So music for me takes me on a journey. And some of the concerts that we've had in the cathedral, for me, they're like worship.
Fabulous. I was going to say, Tangerine Dream, better or worse than the Specials' final concert in the ruins, or is there just you just?
Well, they're different things.
Yeah.
But Tangerine Dream, because of the slightly more sort of atmospheric style of their stuff. When I put up little videos of them, when I do my PowerPoint presentations, I put a little subtext that says worship ? I'm not sure that the Specials felt like worship to me. I mean, it's kingdom building. It was an amazing evening, 2,000 people a night for 4 nights. And hanging out with people. Again, I'd bought their records, and so I have my own copy of Too Much Too Young from when I was at uni, I think. Now signed, by Linville and others. So I am super excited about all of that stuff. I think I want to say, though, Kate, because I have not said it, unless people misunderstand my calling, I am also quite excited about Jesus. And I think people sometimes say in the job of being a dean, are you more of a priest or more of a businessman? Because I have to run a small business. And I say, well, the truth is it's an absolute combination of the two. I think it's 100% of both things. And the work of the cathedral is immensely demanding and very mind and soul expanding because of all the people that we work with, in different faith communities, in the non-faith community, across many different gender identities, many different ways of being human, all of which is so tricky that it has done more for my prayer life than anything else, I think probably since I first entered the ordination process, 45 and more years ago, because I need to turn to God at the beginning of each day and repeatedly through the day in order to hold me on track and in order to both to guide me and equip me for the work that I need to do.
Absolutely. And I think that probably is half answering what was going to be my final question, because the job you do is amazing. It's huge. But it also comes with a ton of challenges. So when God calls you to do something that's amazing, exciting, huge, and utterly daunting and terrifying at the same time. What advice would you give to other people who are, stepping into those spaces?
I think I'd give the advice that I've shared with so many people before I came. So going back to New York, interesting how much that's come into the conversation. But in New York, I was fortunate to live in a seminary, in a theological college in Chelsea in downtown Manhattan. And I was taught prayer and spirituality by a saintly man called Alan Jones, who eventually ended up as Dean of Grace Cathedral, where coincidentally I was able to preach in the autumn. And when I got this job, I wrote to him. I hadn't been in touch for 30 and more years. And I said, dear Alan, you'll never guess where I've ended up leading this cathedral. So speaking of as the dean of one of the greatest cathedrals in the world, have you got any advice for me? And he wrote me a really lovely letter. And my summary of that letter has held me on track for the last 13 years. And the summary is, be yourself and say your prayers. I think I have never seriously doubted that God called me to this job. And so if God called me to this job, as is often said, he didn't call somebody else who I might aspire to be more like. He called me, John. And so what I have to be is to be the person that God has called me to be. And in order to do that, I have to keep in relationship with God. So be myself, say my prayers. And that's my advice that I've handed on to so many other people now. If you have been faithful in following God to where you find yourself today, then be yourself, say your prayers, and then see where that takes you.
Yep, get on with it. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been great to hear some of your story and some of your passion for this place, which we all love so much. Yeah. And
that's a pleasure. And Kate, thank you for coming and joining us. So, one of the great joys is the opportunity to build a team, and to have you as part of this particular team is an absolute joy. So thank you so much for coming and joining us here in the cathedral.
Well, no, I'm having a ball. I kind of feel like my interview's been hijacked. So with that.
Well, I am the boss when all's said and done.
Indeed. Yes, sir. So, well, thanks so much for joining us, and do keep subscribing to our channels and come back and listen to more. We shall be posting some more hopefully next month.